Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We will get started at 1:01 p.m., so roughly 90 seconds from now, to allow everyone into the Zoom platform. Please be patient with us as we prepare for our program. Thank you. Once again, thank you for joining us. We will start in roughly 55 seconds at 1:01 p.m. Thank you. All right, I have 1:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today for our LPF webinar titled Data-Driven Loss Prevention, sponsored by NEDAP Retail. I want to thank NEDAP Retail for sponsoring this webinar from being a valued partner of the Loss Prevention Foundation. NEDAP's technology enables an overview of complex situations. The simplicity and clarity of their product helps people to work more efficiently and successfully. Their mission is to make it simple for retailers to always have the right products available. My name is Matt Schreiner, and I'm the Director of Operations for the Loss Prevention Foundation, and I will be your host today. Before we get to the presentation and introducing our distinguished speakers, I want to cover a couple of logistics items. First and foremost, the session is being recorded. Everyone who registered will get a link to the recording tomorrow. Everyone is muted to minimize disruption. And we do ask that any and all questions are asked through the Q&A box within the Zoom platform. So let's meet today's distinguished speakers. First up, we have Tom Bolanos, Key Account Manager, ID Cloud Platform for NEDAP Retail. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon.
Next up, we have Corey Daff, Business Development, ID Cloud Platform for NEDAP Retail. Good afternoon, Corey.
Good afternoon, Matt.
Thank you, sir. And last but not least, we have Jake Valenti, Marketing Manager, ID Cloud Platform for NEDAP Retail. Good afternoon, Jake.
Good afternoon.
And at this time, I will turn it over to Jake and the team to take you through the material that they have prepared.
So we're just going to start off with a quick poll question to get you guys thinking. And this is helpful for us because it dictates where we might end up attending. And we just want to know the value that each of these places has for you. So first poll, which of the following events are you planning on attending in 2022? NRF Big Show, NRF Converge, Global Security Exchange 2022, RILA Reset Asset Protection Conference, LPRC Impact, ISC West, none, or other. And we'll just give you a little bit of time to answer right now. Okay, so it looks like the winner here is RILA. And a few guys at the Big Show too. Okay, this is interesting. So I'm going to pass it over now to Tom and Corey.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. Yeah, so before we get really started and dive into the data-driven loss prevention world, I just wanted to lay the foundation as far as what we're talking about when we talk about traditional EAS. We're not really specifically calling out a technology. We're more calling out the original concept of EAS. Obviously, EAS has changed, whether it's AM technology, RF, or RFID. But what we consider traditional EAS would be a traditional beeping EAS system. So there's no intelligence behind it. Basically, a hard tag, whether that's AM, RF, or RFID, would go through the antennas, and then it would beep once it goes through. So that's our idea of what traditional EAS is. And what we're going to dive into more is how data has driven the change for EAS, and what that data can do, what kind of insights it can bring us, and how it can make us more effective from the loss prevention. So with that, we're going to go into three main benefits. I'm going to turn it over to Corey to talk about the first one, and then I will talk about the second, and then he will go into the third as well. So turn it over to you, Corey.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Tom. Well, it's great to have everyone here today. For today's show, we're going to be talking about the benefits that item level EAS can bring, just as Tom mentioned, right? And we're going to try to stay focused on sort of three specific concept areas or areas of impact, if you will. We've got them shown here, and the first one that is shown is to be able to drive down shrink using next gen and integration ready EAS. We'll get to elaborating around what that means and what it is. Then we're going to have Tom talk about the second one. He's going to talk about once you have additional insights that can be gained from integrations like this, to what you'd be able to do to predict and anticipate in the future and do with that additional information. And then finally, we're going to round it all back into another process within any retail environment and talk about how these item level insights can inform on and really increase your ability to have more real-time replenishment and what that looks like when this data is at your fingertips. So the first thing we want to do, if Jake wouldn't mind jumping to the next slide, is to sort of define, and mind you, this is our definition, right? We're not in the Webster dictionary yet, but in terms of how we're looking at what a next gen RFID EAS concept is going to be, it really comes down to one thing that takes it very much past just alarming in store, and that's using an EPCIS repository. Now, what we're getting at here is making sure that when something goes out of the store in a particular status, that the alarm is no longer just something that's a deterrent value or a notification that someone needs to look or react towards the entrance. An EPCIS is essentially just a log of all the items that would or should be in the store, and you can update that database as a sold or unsold item. Basically, if things go through a proper read point or a transaction point, to let the system know, hey, this is an item that is now able to leave the store in a sold status. Now, you've seen traditional gates kind of like this one, and we wanted to show this. I'm sure you're all familiar with our overhead technology as well. But this is actually an example of an RFID gate that would have the ability, when an item leaves that has an inlay upon it, to check that status and basically to communicate with the database and say, okay, is this an item that is in a sold status or an unsold status? And then when you understand that it is an unsold item, there's a multitude of different things that can occur from there as long as the integrations are present. So to define it, when you go from traditional EAS to next gen, we're considering that is that you have a way to communicate with a database or an EPCIS to be able to take it past just a notification that a sensor has left the store or whatever area you have gated. So hopefully that's clear here. I wanted to give a quick look at also how that plays into the larger scope of a sort of the simplest integration. Jake, if you wouldn't mind bumping to the next slide. This is where we try to demonstrate essentially what a secure serialized transaction could look like as a goal end state, right? And we have customers that are very, very close to this, that are doing this, and that are just sort of embarking on this. But we see EAS as playing into sort of the second half of a transaction, where if you are committing to having a serialized POS read, something that can inform that database of exactly the status we've been talking about, that you now can look at your EAS solution as less of a beeping system and more of a data read point that can inform on things that may have happened. So a big key here, right, is that with all of these different points that a serialized read or an RFID read could occur, you're opening up a door where via API, you could have this information flowing into other sources and being able to do analysis based on where it's seen and where it's not seen, to make better decisions about specific items. So again, just to go back to it, this is the main sort of simplest goal end state for a retailer that wants to get to next gen EAS with serialized transactions at the POS. And there's sort of a multitude of ways that you can grow into this model that we've created here. So I think that kind of gives a good understanding of where the integration piece comes in. And this is the first value that we see of next gen EAS, is the ability to then take item level insights at the same general area that traditional EAS has participated in and turn that into item level insights that you can then use to predict and try to get more proactive within the environment. Tom's going to tell us a little bit about how we see that data impacting such decisions, both internally and externally. I'll leave it to you, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. So yeah, just to expand on what Corey was saying, once you have that foundation set with your RFID system and your itemized products, and there's a lot of new benefits that you can have from a loss prevention standpoint. And we've been working with retailers for the last year and a half to really explore this and see what's really valuable to retailers. So I'm going to lay out, like Corey said, the external main benefits and then the internal main benefits as well. So just looking at the external theft, I think the biggest impact that having this type of EAS system in your store provides is the ability to have itemized shrink visibility. The ability to know exactly what's going out your store is a huge benefit from traditional EAS systems. In the past, something walks out the door, it's a beep. You don't know if it's a false alarm. You don't know what went out. You don't know the value of the theft. And you certainly don't know how to replenish the store once that happens. So the ability to really look into these alarms and know exactly what went out the door is huge for insights for the retailer. You can start producing hot item reports, having specific items that you know in your store that are the highest, the most stolen products, and you can break that down, for different seasonal comparative analysis, along with your regional thefts. So in certain parts of the country, different products are going to be more hot, so that you can really start to get strategic on how you place your products within your store, how you use security in order to defend those products. And then even if you didn't have any type of sales data integration, what you could do, and what a lot of retailers start doing, if they have products that have RFID labels on them, and they're still using hard tags, and if they have a hybrid system that uses both RF or RFID, then what they can do is when a product goes out the door and a hard tag makes that standard alarm, you can then go into the system and see what RFID labels were going through that system at the same time. And although it's not 100% perfect, you have a very high probability that the products going through the system at that time were associated to those hard tags as well. So it can give you some great insight as far as, you have an alarm, a traditional hard tag alarm, but if those items are actually RFID labeled, you can have insight into actually what went out. So that's just a great intro benefit, I think, of really moving into the itemized EAS security side. And then one of the big benefits we've seen, and a lot of retailer struggles with ORC crime, organized retail. And what we've seen is been the biggest value is not only just detecting these, but then being able to use thresholds and being able to be smart about when we alarm on these. And we know most of the time with ORC it's bulk theft, and we know a lot of times they go after certain brands. So whether that's Nike, whether it's Under Armour, Levi's, what we can do is we can actually start to do notifications based on the number of products going out, and then tie that to brands. So if it's a suspicious activity to see more than 5 pairs of jeans go out the door at the exact same time, you can start to flag those. You can then pair in your cameras, so you can actually see a screenshot of the person doing the activity, quickly review it, and then send out ORC store notifications within your stores. So one of our retailers, what they see is ORC gangs go into a store, they hit it up, they steal a whole bunch, then they go down the highway and go to the next store, and they do it over and over again. So this retailer was telling us, hey, how great would it be is if when this happens, we know as close to real time as possible, and we could send out a notification to all the surrounding stores, letting them know what was stolen, and then also sending a screenshot or a camera shot of the actual thief doing it. So then they know exactly what to look for. So, you know, I think it can really impact ORC quite a bit. And I think also knowing exactly what went out the door, you know, if someone grabs 15 pairs of Levi's, knowing that is huge for replenishment, but then also for the value of the theft itself. And when you get in the prosecuting stage, when you're in court, if you have, you know, hard data that shows exactly what was stolen and when it was stolen, and then you have cameras to back that up, there's not much the thief can say in court where he said, "Oh, I didn't take that." Well, we have the data that shows that. So I think that's extremely impactful for sure. And next, I'm just going to show a quick video of one of our retailers that you know, and I'll kind of talk it through. But basically, what we see is we see this guy in the colorful jacket. He's walking through the section of jeans. Looks like a normal shopper from this perspective. And then as we go, you start to see it gets a little bit more suspicious. I don't know too many people that buy that many jeans, especially without looking at them or trying them on, or, you know, getting multiple styles and grabs another handful of jeans. This is certainly not normal shopping, you know, behavior. But we also don't see, you know, like the people in the store, the staff, they're not seeing it. They're not focused on this guy. So the idea that they're going to catch this, you know, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But without a system, it's going to be very hard to catch this. So you can see, I'm always amazed at the courage that these people have. You just fill in the entire cart, walking through the store very nonchalantly, very confidently, and then heads for the door. And you'll be able to see when he gets to the door, the level of staff interaction. And I know a lot of retailers now don't have, or they have policies where they can't really engage the thief anymore. So, you know, these type of alerts and these types of systems can really help us be not only preventative, but proactive after the fact. And you see him walk through our systems right here, and you actually see the alarm go off on the system because those are tagged with hard tags. But again, no staff was able to stop him. And even if they were able to look at the cameras and see that this hard tag alarm went off, they would have no idea what exactly went out the door, except just from the camera that there was a lot of jeans, but they wouldn't know what sizes they were, what styles. And so that's where we really see the power of this type of technology. So then moving on from external theft, we see a lot of benefits on the internal side as well. And one of the places we see that is that right at the point of sale. You know, we're able to now give notifications on suspicious point of sale transactions. So, you know, whether it's sweethearting or whether it's transaction cancellations, we've seen this, and we've actually caught employees doing this where they, you know, ring up a product, they cancel it. The product shouldn't be going out the door, but then we see that same product go out the door, and we see in the sales data that product was never sold. We also see where we get sweethearting, where, you know, a customer actually does a real transaction, but then they throw in some extra products as well. So we can see as they walk out the door that some of the products were paid for, but then normally the highest priced item or products were not paid for. So that's one of the ways we can really combat internal theft at the register, just being able to see these trends and being able to see what's happening. And we can see it when it's suspicious, and then from there we can investigate further. Another place is out of hours. A lot of retailers, you know, they have certain hours when they know products should be coming in or should be leaving the store through transactions. But if products are leaving the store when it's closed, that seems to be a bit suspicious. Products being sold out of hours, we saw this with a retailer, and, you know, I would think, oh, you know, as long as someone's paying for it, does it really matter if it's before or after the store closes? But in this case, it was a big deal. This specific retailer sells very limited edition products that are released by the manufacturer on certain dates at certain times, and they're released to the public at those certain dates at certain times. And that keeps the demand up for these products. So if employees are selling these outside of those hours and selling them to resellers and getting kickbacks, that is not only a dishonest way to do it, but that also threatens the contract that current retailers have with these manufacturers. So it's very important that when we see this, we can react to it, and we can you know, open up a case on these specific employees and rectify the behavior. And then finally, if you have read points on your back door, it's really interesting to see what products are going out the back door. You know, sometimes we'll see a whole bunch of RFID labels, and we investigate it, and it ends up that, you know, they're old labels that they're throwing away or something like that, and it's not nefarious. Other times, employees are going out to the back to get rid of product or to get rid of the trash, and they're actually taking product with them out the back door, hiding it somewhere, and then coming back later and taking it and leaving. So those are just some of the internal and external benefits. I think as we continue to get more and more integrations and dive further into this, we're going to see more and more benefits across the store. So I'll turn it back over to Corey now, but yeah, that's just a quick overview of some of the main benefits that we've seen over the last year and a half working with retailers in this space.
Definitely. Thank you, Tom. That video always gets me. I'm right there with you. It's incredible the confidence they have to just stroll right on out, but I guess that's why we're here, right? Well, so anyway, to kind of come back to our three main focus points, this last slide is where I wanted to chat with you guys about replenishment and how we see this concept sort of playing into it. So going back to it, right? If you have a serialized look at what is leaving your store, perhaps what is being sold, right? Any item that may have left, essentially, is what we're talking about. You have the potential to get those near real-time updates. So you're able to see, okay, maybe we know that we sold 5 items today, but we didn't know that we lost an extra 2. And perhaps you only had 7 on the actual sales floor. Having that data where you can be made aware that you did lose those 2 items could be the difference between having a sort of 2x sales loss, where you have someone coming in trying to find that item in their size. And as we all know, right, if they don't find the item in their size, the chances of them remaining, it's definitely much more slim. So we kind of dream of a future where you're able to get that information that wouldn't have come through from a next day's inventory count if you are doing it with RFID, or heaven forbid, right, if it's a monthly or quarterly or even yearly inventory count, that may be the first time that you really become aware of it. So those real-time updates is what we're very excited about. And to take it past the sales floor, stockroom replenishment. Now, right now, any SKU-based system is going to give the opportunity to have notifications if you're far enough along where should stock run low that you could be either prompted or maybe even have automatic orders queued. But we actually see the loss prevention data informing those exact same tracks in the future and opening up the potential for the same kind of API integrations with your suppliers. Where perhaps if you, like in this video, the thief was going after Levi's jeans, right? And if they had been made aware that those 15, 20 pairs had left, maybe that automatically cues an order to Levi's to say, hey, we know that we've lost a substantial amount of product that we expect to be a hot seller. We want to do that at an immediate order to get these things replenished. The whole idea comes back to having a store environment where employees can be used for the most important tasks, and then they could have different triggers and alerts that could cause them to think about things like replenishment that are often very difficult to be able to make sure you stay on top of, because the financial ramifications, of course, of losing that sale sort of twice, if you lost it to theft and then to a missed sale, it can be a very big deal. So that's kind of where we see that third benefit, is to being able to provide your employees with another tool for their toolbox that might be able to allow them to take their mind off of the idea of replenishment and to sort of outsource that to a notification that would prompt them to take those actions on an as needed basis based on what the reads are seeing going out of the store. So I think that kind of brings us to the conclusion of these 3 main focus areas. And I know we do have another poll coming up, and quite frankly, we're most excited about the Q&A portion. But I did want to touch on and kind of give yeah, you're right, Jake, you're right there with me, to give a sort of hint at what we've got coming in the future, because we've talked about a couple of different vectors that data could come in on that could make an impact. One of the most exciting ones we see for the future, though, is around return fraud. I think this quote from the LPRC is fantastic, where we see over 70% of loss prevention executives would indicate that return fraud is indeed a problem for them that they'd like to address. And we'll do a little bit more chatting on this in the future, where we'll talk about how this vector can really make an impact, and all of the different validation points that can feed into making sure that it is a credible source of things that may be suspicious or return fraud. Because obviously anyone can understand that if you're going to venture into the realm of potentially not allowing returns to happen or potentially accusing of fraud, the biggest thing is around the credibility of the data you're working with. So stay tuned for more on that. And hopefully we'll have some dates to be shared in the coming weeks. But that's another vector that we'll hope to talk about, which could have been a fourth bullet point for today. But we wanted to make sure we left enough time for questions. So I'll turn it back over to Jake to handle the poll and wrap us up. And then we'll be excited to hopefully try to answer any questions you guys have. I'll leave it to you, Jake.
Thank you, Corey. So we have one last poll, and it's, do you currently have plans to implement RFID technology in the future? No, you already have it. You're planning within the next year or the next 5 years. And this is just something we're curious about. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer this one. Still muted. So about a little less than half, or a little more than half, say yes. At some point, they're either already working with RFID or have concrete plans to, and just a little under half say no, they don't currently. It's interesting. So some closing notes. We're going to be at our big show this year. So I saw that some of you guys are attending that. Upcoming in January, so make sure to stop by our booth. And also you can email me at jake.vellante@neatapp.com to stay up to date on future webinars, like we might be doing one on return fraud, like Corey mentioned. And also we'll be coming out with our revamped ID Cloud solution sometime around October. So if you're interested in learning more about that, we'll be dripping some information out on that coming up. And lastly, just any questions. I'm going to turn it back to Matt to see if you guys have any questions for us. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jake. If you do have questions, please enter those into the Q&A box within the Zoom platform. We'd love to answer as many as we can that time allows for. So first question, how often are you identifying cashiers where they're failing to scan products for legitimate customers, or identifying intentional misscans for sweethearting to family and friends?
Yeah, I would say we at least in the retailers we worked with lately, we have not seen any examples of a mistake where someone should have been scanning something. I'm sure that comes up. I mean, right now we categorize that as theft, but I'm sure as we dive into it, and you'd have to talk with the cashier whether it was intentional or not. But I would think, this definitely is a system that will flag on that, because at the end of the day, if there's a product going out the door, then and it hasn't been paid for, it's going to be flagged. And we have caught a lot of sweethearting at the cash register, where the employees has family, friends, or whatnot, scans a few pairs of socks and then throws in a bunch of shoes as well. So we do see it, and I know that a lot of our retailers think this is a big win for them to be able to actually start investigating this side of it. So yeah, it's definitely evolving as we dive in more and more. We're seeing more examples of it, and we're seeing more and more use cases within it. But yeah, it's definitely something the system does pick up, and it's just how we manipulate the data or how we use the data in order to draw the best conclusions of I guess the intention of the employee.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, in your video example, who tagged the products with the RFID tags, the store teams, distribution teams, or the manufacturers for those products?
So in that specific example, that was the manufacturer. Levi's source tags their products, so those were Levi jeans, and that's what was on from the actual manufacturer. Now they had just standard RF tags on them as well, so hard tags that were RF, and that's what actually tripped the light on the alarm. But the data that we're pulling it was from those from the labels that were put on by the manufacturer.
Fantastic, excellent. So this question comes from a retailer. If we have QR codes or 2D barcodes on our products, does this help us relative to data-driven LP?
I could take that one, Tom, if that's okay. So the QR code, it's one thing that I've been very excited about. So basically, if you have a QR code on your products and you are able to get more data out of that barcode than the standard SKU, then yes, it most certainly does, right? Everything that we talk about with RFID, though I guess an RFID vendor shouldn't necessarily say it, right, can be essentially triggered by those read points. So if you're doing transactions at the POS, a mobile point of sale, if you're so far along as to have mobile customer self-checkout, being able to use a QR code for that is where you launch yourself into the ability to trigger that serialized item. And that's, for anyone that's not familiar, to make the differentiation between maybe this shirt that I'm trying to purchase versus the exact same shirt, which may be the same size, the same color, basically for all intents and purposes, the same exact item, besides that it's not the one next to it. That's where you are opening that up with QR codes versus the standard SKU barcode. So hopefully that answers it. But yes, that is definitely one step that can get you that much closer to be able to have secured transactions, especially if you're using some of these new things like mobile POSs. That's a great question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next question. Can your technology, or has your technology been set up and used in the supply chains for retailers? And if so, can you elaborate on that?
Sure, yeah, I can take that. It's a short answer. I'd like to have a bit of a better answer for this one. I would say that the short and sweet one would be no, simply because the product has not been set up, configured, tested, and basically put to market for supply chain. That being said, I would mention that we do have a few clients who are using RFID technology and some of our software in their supply chain, although it is in very early stages. I would need to know a little bit more about how you would expect to use it. I can think of many use cases, but that's what I mean is there's a lot of them. But the answer would be yes, depending on the product and the labels that you're able to use. If you're trying to track things leaving that area or certain parts of the supply chain, it definitely could be possible.
Okay, excellent. Can you all elaborate a little bit on how NetApp provides insight into organized retail crime for many of your retail clients?
Yeah, sure. And I kind of went over that on the slide with ORC, but I think the biggest thing is being able to see exactly what products are going out, and then being able to have almost a real-time alert of that event. Because I think the reality is, unless you know the ORC gang is coming to your store, a lot of times it's hard to prevent that initial hit. But the idea is, once you have that initial hit, you let all the other surrounding stores know. And that was extremely important for this specific retailer. To be able to curb that ORC hit, rather than just happening in at 5 stores, we decrease it down to 1, and then when it's down at 1, because we have the data to back up exactly what went out the door, we can build a really good case on the prosecution side of things. So I think those are the main benefits, but I think also just continuing to advance in this space, we're going to find more and more use cases and more patterns within the data that we can continue to leverage.
Absolutely. Next question. What is the average amount of time that it takes to prove out a positive ROI on your system?
So I could take that one, Tom, if that's okay. And so it definitely varies. Typically, we always like to say that like a 3-month time frame is a realistic expectation, but that mostly comes down to the fact that depending on the integration environment, how many things are already done and how many are not, that the setup is typically, what we're trying to make sure we account for there. We've seen customers who, once we get those integration pieces up and running, which may take anywhere from a day or two to whole weeks, immediately being able to see exactly how the solution is going to provide value. But we try to make sure that we take into account the trends look at thing, as opposed to having the system stood up and immediately, catching one thief. We're trying to focus more on, hey, if we're looking at it over that 3-month period, how has it gone up and down? And then how can we extrapolate that out if it was a 4-quarter sort of instance? That's where we've seen the most success. But we can have it up and running quite quickly.
Excellent, which ties into the next question. What are the top ROI metrics that you guys help retailers to kind of formulate to demonstrate the organizational value of your solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting one, right? Because I'll be honest, and I think the poll that we had at the initial steps, or was that the last one, about whether or not are adopting RFID, right? So if you have half of retailers that maybe say that they are not, which I would love to hear more about, by the way, because it's extremely interesting. proving out basically the efficacy or the credibility of the system, it's where we spend a lot of our time because it is still sort of on the cutting edge, right? So typically we do end up in those conversations where we have to prove out, what is the level of performance that a system needs to achieve in order to be deemed accurate, right? We actually have found that, striving for a 90 or 100% read rate is actually not the most important thing, right? But if you don't sort of establish an understanding of what the pick rate or read rate is, it's first, and then what that means, how it can be improved, it's a little bit tougher to move forward. But once you get past there, then what we typically are most inclined to move towards is some of the things that have been mentioned, right? Like increases in sales, being able to go back and look at trends and say, how much data are we adding now into the organization that might give them a chance to proactively move the way they set up their stores based on which items they expect to be stolen the most. Do they have a chance now to take actually a real stab at ORC and alert an area around them so that they can now add in the ROI of what is maybe prevented from an ORC perspective. But this is something we're definitely starting to explore more and more, because what we do is we have to find out, based on any retailer we work with that does have serialization within their environment, is that they're finding a lot more data that they really never knew existed. So it's sort of an ongoing experiment for us, but those are some of the main points. Tom, if there was anything you wanted to add to that as well, please feel free.
No, I think you hit that on the head. I would say, on the refill as well. I mean, we do see that a lot. I mean, the value of knowing what went out the door and then being able to refill that is huge, because as we know, with omnichannel, a lot of our retailers, they fulfill their omnichannel orders from the stores. And if they don't know what's in their store, they think their inventory is accurate, but then, they're hit by some theft and then they don't have those products, it just slows down that entire process too. So I think that I would just add that on top of it, knowing exactly what's in the store. That way you can be, actionable about, fulfilling orders and the replenishment side of things.
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of retailers are considering making all their sites online distribution centers, right? So, and several retailers have even moved to the point where if a customer is willing to go to the local store to pick it up because it's actually in stock, offering a discount to do so, minimizing that shipping cost and minimizing that operating cost to really enhance the profitability for the organization, continues to be where retail continues to evolve. So excellent. Thank you very much for that. How often are you guys detecting any kind of discount abuse with this inventory management solution?
That's a tougher one too. So I guess how often, it's more dependent on, again, what is available in the retailer's environment, right? We've seen more instances of different, like, canceled transactions, and we talked about it a bit from a sweethearting perspective Tom had mentioned, right? But I guess what that question, where I would answer that, is that if a retailer finds this to be one of their most sort of critical needs, being able to detect it would just come down to making sure that the data is available on what should and shouldn't be discounted, understanding like the actual EPCs that are associated with those at a store level. And again, it's more of a question of how often would you want it, and are all the data feeds present? Because that is definitely something that we can do. We haven't had a retailer yet who is primarily focused around what's happening in the store relative to their discounting strategy, though. So that's definitely something we'd be curious to explore.
Absolutely. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with an inventory management solution. Voided transactions or voided line items are probably going to be more prevalent in the data with this type of a solution. So thank you very much for that, Corey. Last question that we have so far is, do you think traditional EAS systems are going away?
I'll let you take that one, Tom, if you want. I know you've been around longer than I have.
Yeah, and all my many years of life. Yes, I would say that there's always going to be a place for your EAS systems, and especially with retailers that don't have the ability to go into RFID. Depending on products and whatnot, if RFID just isn't feasible, then of course this traditional EAS will stay around. And I think traditional EAS still provides the deterrent factor. But I think as data becomes more and more available, as retailers begin to source tag more and more, it only makes sense to be able to leverage that data. And if you don't have the EAS system to do that, then your EAS system is really just a beeping deterrent at that point. And so if you have product in your store that has source tags, why wouldn't you leverage that? Why wouldn't you want to see that data? So we always tell our customers, even if you're not using RFID right now, all of our systems can be upgradable to RFID. So at least have that future in your mind, and be future proof when you're making those decisions, because you never know, maybe today you're not using RFID, but maybe in 3 years, the technology continues to change, continues to get better, labels continue to get better. And the read ranges get more and more efficient. So, our big thing is, even if you're not using it now, make sure at least you're making the decisions where you're not closing those doors for the future.
Right. I would say even too, one caveat, lots changed over the last couple of years, right? And we're kind of doing a lot of things that we never thought we would. And I think that if you go back to the traditional EAS use case and what was one of the most important things, which is alarm response. And, one of the researches that we've done in the past couple of years has been, hey, what do you think your alarm response rate actually is? And we found that retailers would sort of openly let us know that it's below 10% or lower in terms of, and that's like for total amount of alarms, how many actually get responded to. The one thing I would throw in there is I think that in an environment where you have your alarm response or your interaction rates, and basically if something happens as a result of these beeps, sure, I mean, there's always going to be an opportunity for this to make an impact. It's simply a question of, culturally, and then on a private company base, right? What is their individual company culture going to look like? Because as long as alarm response is high, there's probably always going to be a place for it. I think we're just showing that in different industries that the value that can come from actually seeing that item within sort of an Internet of Things type environment is going to bring a lot more value than a beep that if someone doesn't hear never happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that alarm response has come a long way in the 25 years I've been in retail. I remember when I was at my first retailer, we actually had to write in a logbook every time we responded to an alarm. And it was a 3-ring binder, and it had the nice breakaway chain around the pen, because the pens would get stolen. And then towards the end of my retail days, we had an electronic keypad to respond. But even that seems a little bit dated when you think about how far video analytics has come. We can readily identify our employees in many retailers based off of the color of their outfit, based off of their name badge if it's tagged, another use case, right? So we can tell when an employee leaves a register check stand and goes and responds to somebody standing at the door. We can identify that the flasher on the top of the AAS system is actually flashing, that the system did activate for those interactions, and really driving that culture and having quantifiable data that's not reliant on somebody pushing a button because maybe it timed out because it took longer than 30 seconds to respond to the customer, deactivate the tag, validate the receipt, and everything that goes along with it. Now the video can tell us precisely what that interaction is on each occasion with those ROI models, if that is available to you within your video analytics platform. So the future is near. We continue to see these enhancements. NEDAP continues to push the boundaries. They're a great partner of the Loss Prevention Foundation. We thank you guys so much for partnering with us on this webinar. We look forward to the next one. NEDAP does have a couple of announcements for everyone. First and foremost, they are sponsoring a 20% discount code off of the LPC, LPQ course, as well as our LPF membership. If you're interested, the promo code is valid through September 17th of next week. NEDAP ID Cloud is the promo code. We will be giving away 5 free LPC or LPQ course scholarships to random recipients that attended today's webinar. So be on the lookout for tomorrow's email, as you might be one of the lucky winners. As always, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you back with us on future LPF webinars. Please stay safe. We look forward to seeing you real soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.